also think that when people think about, I need to market my product, they're thinking too big, right? They're thinking, I want 1,000 customers, 10,000 customers, right? Because these are the numbers get thrown around, right? When we read about startups or when we talk to our friends that are like ahead of us, right? But you need to find your first 10 customers unaffiliated.
Exactly.
And then you need to get you to your first 100 customers.
Yeah.
And even at 100, you could still be like maybe a bit sales led.
Yeah.
But think about it in small chunks, right? How do I get my next 100, my next 100, my next 100? So it doesn't have to be 1,000.
Right.
We haven't even reached 1,000.
Yeah.
The recording of this podcast.
Yeah, that's right.
And we're way past 1 million at this point.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, like just be open-minded, but like think small. Welcome to ProfitLed Season 2, our journey to 1 million, episode 19.
Oof, wow.
I'm Melissa Kwan, co-founder and CEO of eWebinar, and I'm here with my co-host, Todd Parmley, eWebinar's COO. Todd, how's it going?
Well, it's nice to see your face in person.
We are in New York.
Yes.
The last time we were together, it was in Bangkok, recording
yeah.
this.
Yeah, so here we are in New York.
So I hadn't been back since, do I dare say this, the pandemic.
Oh.
Do we still talk about that? Or is that totally over? Yeah, that was not that long ago, I guess.
Well, when did you come in the pandemic? You came before it.
No, we came, David and I came when people thought it was kind of over.
Oh,
and
right.
then there was another, Omicron came. So we were here just for that.
Right.
And I remember, for anyone that knows New York can connect to this. I remember like 9 p.m. we wanted to get dinner, which is like early in New York.
Right.
And we went to St. Mark's, like one of the busiest, like almost 24-hour streets. And then everything was closed.
Everything was closed, yeah.
And it was actually during a time when it was kind of over. So we were quite shocked. And I remembered like paying $20 for like a vodka soda in a normal pub.
Right.
So I feel like prices have actually come down a bit since then. The tip has not, though. The tip has gone up. And you really have to look hard to find the custom tip button.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
No, they hide it because they want you to just give them like 30.
And you have to like triple tap while no one's looking.
Yeah.
But it is the greatest city in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that like coming into the city and seeing it alive again, it still hits me because there was that period where it was like, what is going on? It was like a ghost town. It was so weird. I would ride my bike into the city and it was bizarre. So
I mean, it's so nice to be back when the city's back.
When the city's back, yeah.
I mean, there's nothing like it. I mean, we love just like restaurant bar hopping. Like we sit at the bar of the restaurant.
Yeah, right.
And I think it's really unique in New York because the bars are not like the tables, right? You can, like, even if you don't make a reservation, you can sit at the bar.
Yes.
And nowhere else in the world is it like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So usually the bar is part of the reservation.
Oh.
So you can actually get into almost any restaurant if you just sit at the bar, which is actually what we like anyway.
Yeah, that's a hack.
That's a hack.
When you visit New York.
Yeah. So in the last episode, we talked about customer horror stories and how the customer is not always right.
Yeah.
And how we as a company set the standard for like vendor customer relationships, especially through support inbox, which is not always that friendly.
No.
It's actually the most unfriendly place.
So weird.
So today we're going to dive into the 12 $0 marketing strategies that we used after exhausting founder-led sales, which is how we got this company off the ground. And if you guys remember in episode 10, we really dove into founder-led sales, how I was just really like knocking on doors, like digital doors, and just getting people to sign up, getting referrals, things like that. But that only goes so far for like $100 product. Right. So that I was feeling that really getting exhausted around month 9.
Yeah.
No, feeling around month 6, but at month 9, it was like totally gone. Yeah. And we had to try a lot of things and a lot of things that also didn't work. So, we had to do something dramatically different, which none of us had done before.
Right.
Which was marketing. I don't think I knew how important that was until that exhausted, because in my career for like 10 years in startups and also before that was just sales led. companies. When I was working for companies, I was also in sales. So I never really thought that people wouldn't buy from you if you reached out to them.
You know, I hope when people listen to this, because I feel like in hindsight, we sound like such morons.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like, it is real when you're this small of a team and you're bootstrapped. You just can't hide. You can't throw money at the problem. Would that even work? But we did not know what to do.
Yeah, I think what I underestimated was how hard it was to sell a cheap product. And I think that came as a shock because I was always selling $10,000 contracts, $100,000 contracts. When I was working at SAP, it was even higher.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that those, like the way people buy $100 products was just on their own.
On their own, yeah.
Like if you think about how we buy software, right? Like signing up for a MailChimp or, you know, a Monday, like we don't talk to a salesperson.
No.
But I never realized that. I thought, well, if you have someone to talk to, it's better, right? But people don't buy that way. They think that you're wasting their time. And that was actually what was happening to me. So even though my referrals were talking to me, if it was 2 degrees removed, I couldn't get them on the phone. Like I couldn't even get them to respond on a message or whether it was LinkedIn or email, like it was just not a thing.
Yeah.
So after that, we had to figure out a bunch of different marketing strategies and really just learning from other people, right? Like I have a founders group that I reach out to and just seeing what people were doing on, you know, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, like how they were actually selling their product in the same price range. So I've got 12 $0 marketing strategies here that I thought we could talk through.
Yeah.
And this is actually from one of my most viral LinkedIn posts.
Oh, because you're the queen of bootstrapping on LinkedIn.
That's the word on the street. I did not say that.
I love it so much.
Yeah, someone had referred me to that. I'm like, yeah, that means my branding is working.
Yeah. We need We need to have a coronation at some point.
Yeah. Not today, though.
No.
So the first one is, I mean, it seems obvious, but definitely want to dive into this a little bit. But it's to build an incredible product that people want to tell their friends about.
Yeah, I mean, this is the single most important thing, right? It's at the heart of product-led growth. It's it needs to be, people need to understand how it works immediately. They need to experience its value immediately. That requires it to be very well designed in terms of the user interface. When people have expectations about how it's supposed to work, those need to be met immediately. Like it just needs to feel like they've known how to use it all along and that it solves a problem for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we say, well, build an incredible product, like people listening might be like, well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
But not obviously, because building an incredible product means going the extra mile where no one's willing to go.
Yeah.
Right. So for us, you know, we will pick something apart even if it takes an extra month.
Yeah.
Because it's just that much better. Right. It means like counting every single pixel and making sure everything lines up, not just, oh, it does what it does.
Right.
And let's just put it out there and see what happens. Right. We really try to estimate what people may do and what they may ask for and really go the extra mile to build it. And to your point, like it all starts with a really, really good design.
Yeah.
And that's something that we've never skimmed money on.
Right.
Right. In fact, our designer costs us $4,000 a day. And we don't hire him every day.
Right.
But when we do hire him and he's like, you know, he's really good at what he does. That's why he charges that much, but he's also fast.
Yeah, right.
So it all kind of, I think,
and it's
out.
I mean, $4,000 for a large company is nothing, right?
Yeah.
But like for us, that's a big spend, but it is worth it. I mean, if you don't have this, you can just go home, right?
And I love to equate design of a product as like your storefront, because it's literally your digital storefront. Like, would you renovate your restaurant or not to attract people to come in?
Right.
In fact, if your restaurant looks great, if your menu looks great, people will at least give you a chance.
Right. But then if your food sucks.
Yeah, then they won't stay and they won't come back.
Right.
Yeah, but at least you're getting them like through the door, right? So really to create an Apple-like product.
Right.
That really delights people before they even try it. And of course, that also starts from the website, right?
Right, which is in some way its own product. I mean, it needs to function.
Well, it's an extension of your product.
Yeah, right.
So I think in software especially, a lot of people kind of cut corners, right? Like if you offer, automated emails, for example, right? Like we're a webinar product. So there's reminders, there's follow-ups after, confirmations, but maybe they only offer emails, like 3 emails that kind of work, but you can't time them. Right. Maybe you can't, you can't, what do you say? Set the time, like set the time.
You can't control the timing. You can't segment them properly to different audiences. Everything was well thought out.
Yeah.
The only people who know how hard software is are people who build software.
Yeah.
Everyone else thinks like it's so easy, but to get it right is very hard.
I mean, I would say that even within a software company, somebody like myself, right, would also underestimate what it takes to build good software.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to build software, but I can tell the difference between good and great software.
Yeah, sure.
Great software is smooth. It just works. It just loads.
Yeah.
And things aren't clunky. Like you can't explain it. It has to be experienced. Yeah. And sometimes we get feedback from new signups that say, hey, I just want you to know I'm in software and I know how much thought you've put into creating this. And I'm really impressed with it because you guys are bootstrapped. So when we say build an incredible product, it's really something that needs to be felt.
Yeah.
And not just serving that function that you want it to serve.
I mean, one of the biggest pieces of feedback we get from people, from especially new customers, is how easy it was to transition and how easy it was to pick up the product. And it's hard to market that, right? Because it's sort of like, you just have to believe us. It's really easy to use. But like that is, I would say that's the number one thing we hear.
And that's the experience that people are going to tell their friends.
Yeah, right.
Right. And it's one of those things where when people come into our demo and they say, well, how are you different than X?
Yeah.
And my answer is always, well, you just need to try it.
Yeah.
Because like it really is something that you have to compare with something else.
Yeah. I mean, one of our advantages, I think, is that we use our product to demo our product, right? Which is very rare. Like, who can do that? By attending our demo, they are experiencing the product as an attendee.
Yeah.
So it's why we don't have sign up as our main CTA on the site. It's watch the demo, because when people see the experience, I mean, it's double, because they get to experience the product as an attendee, but then they also get to see the back end.
Yeah.
So it's both, but that's pretty unique to us. But I think that's part of why conversions from the demos are so good.
Yeah. So the second thing is referrals, right? And I know I talked about this in the intro.
Yeah.
But I want to talk a little bit more about how I did that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of sales, but I'm looping it into marketing.
Yeah.
So to get this company off the ground, I'd made a list of 150 people / companies that may use this product. It did help that I had a previous company. So
right. And these were first level.
Yeah. So they were like other startup founders or other companies that I knew of, right? Because if the company's big enough, I can't reach out to the founder. Like they're not really in the day-to-day that I need them to.
Yeah.
But also like types of companies that were in my space before. Like I spent 10 years in real estate tech. That's where we met.
Yes.
And also like made a list of different industries that, and then really found companies within that industry. So even if I didn't know them, like I know they would have known about my previous company. Those are my first level contacts. So I reached out to 150. I probably got a response from like 80% of them, because a lot of them were like really like first level contacts.
Yeah, right.
And but I never ended that conversation without asking for referrals, because even if they weren't going to use this product, I wanted to see if they knew someone who might be able to. And because these were first level contacts, they were very open with who they knew. And I wasn't like, hey, let me know if there's someone in your, in your sphere. But it was like, it was something like, can you refer me to 3 companies that you might know that could take advantage of.
Did you get the info on the spot from them, the names of the companies at least?
Sometimes, sometimes if they would say it, then there's more accountability. I mean, it's a kind of sales tactic.
Yeah.
If I was in front of them, it would be easier.
Yeah, sure.
But because these were all like calls or Zoom calls, it was a bit harder. But what I did after that was I wrote them affordable email. So I wasn't making them do work.
Yeah, right.
Right. The toughest thing, and the reason why people don't give you referrals is because you make them do work.
Yeah.
Right. So you get their commitment.
It's really true.
Yeah. And also sometimes people ask me for referrals and I ask them for affordable email and it's written so poorly.
Yeah.
I either don't do it, or if they're a good friend of mine, I'll rewrite it for them and then ask them to send it to me.
There's not many people who would do that. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. But the thing is, like, I've just been in sales for so long.
Right.
Like that kind of language comes to me, but I understand that it doesn't really come to a lot of people. So it just depends who it is.
Right. You said you didn't get too much traction from these. Like, what
I did from like the first level referrals. I see. Right. But if they were a referral, then they weren't gonna really follow up. So there wasn't an accountability.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so the second level did work.
Yeah. Well, my level is the first level. Their level referral is the first level referral.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whatever. They get it.
So the referral didn't really care.
Right.
There was just no friendship, right? There was no credibility there.
Yeah, sure.
And then that would have been like a straight up pitch.
Right.
But the affordable email has everything that I want the other person to know, because in sales, you want to control the narrative. It's like that game telephone.
Absolutely.
Right? The more people you go through, the more meaning is lost. So I wanted to make sure that I could control the narrative, especially because we were new. And then I, in my signature, I would have my LinkedIn, my website, so things that people could click on
to see
after they receive that email.
It's so funny. I'm thinking of like referrals people have asked me to give and been put in the position where I have nothing to send.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to like figure out how to pitch their product.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, I have no idea. Yeah. So it's funny. It sounds like a no-brainer, but I don't think a lot of people do it.
I mean, this is a tactic that startup founders use when they're asking for VC referrals.
Oh, yeah, right.
But it just makes so much sense.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Like, don't make someone pitch for you.
Right, because they're going to pitch it wrong.
Elevator pitch in the email, and all they have to do is just forward it. And like in the email, you can't be like, hey, you said you would refer me. It's, hey, like I've got this thing. If you know anyone, like, can you forward this? So it still seems like more courteous, and you're not putting the other person on the spot.
Right.
There's a whole strategy around that. So the third marketing strategy was getting into directories. So a directory could be a review site.
Yeah.
It could be like a straight up software listing site.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them out there because those directories sell ads.
Yep.
Right? Or they have banner ads or whatnot.
Yep.
So, and there are even services that will take your pitch and list it for you for like a couple $100 or something like that. So I think we got listed in like 40 or 50.
Yeah,
directories.
I remember this process. It was not too hard to find them.
And they were all backlinks.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
All backlinks to the site, which for a new website was important. And as far as I remember, all of the submissions were very easy, right? This is their business.
Yeah.
So they're not hard to do. It's a little time consuming. Review sites were a little trickier, right? Sometimes people wanted you to pay. Sometimes.
And it just depends how much it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And usually they have like a basic package that's free. So you get like literally just like 3 sentences and a link.
Yep.
Or maybe no link. And then if you pay, then you could get the link and like a software review, which is actually a bit scammy because you submit the review.
It's terrible.
Or they write the review and you get to edit it. But it was a way for us to get like a lot of backlinks very quickly.
Yeah.
But we were so green in marketing that we didn't know what a backlink was.
Yeah.
Like I had to learn why we needed a backlink, and then
this is when we sound like morons, but
where else
that's
do
where
you
we
learn, right?
that's where we were. Like we had no idea.
Yeah, and I think like even as a founder at that point, like having run startups for over 10 years, like I was in sales-led startups, so this like I just never had to do it.
Yeah, right,
Of course I heard of the term backlink,
yeah,
but I didn't realize why it was important for a company's, digital reputation.
Yeah, right.
So that was, learning a lot of SEO and stuff came like a lot later. That was not free, by the way. That was very expensive.
Yes, it was.
And time consuming. But directories is something that you can start like today.
Yeah.
And I think we had a marketing consultant that was also submitting for us.
Yeah, that's right.
So we just had a blurb written, and then he would just like copy and paste and submit it. The annoying thing I think later on was because we did change our pricing at some point, that we had to Google ourselves and then our pricing and then go back to all these sites. So that was a project of its own that we had to hire someone to do that, because at some point people were like, well, I found that your software was X dollars, but now it's twice as much.
Right. And then also when we changed the length of our trial as well.
Yes.
So
I remember.
So those were the two things that were a real pain in the ass, but you know.
Yeah. I mean, people would be like, oh, I thought your trial was 30 and now it's 14. Can I get 30? I'm like, do we give it to them or not?
Yeah.
Sometimes we give it to them.
Sometimes we did if they were nice, but
usually not because they weren't nice. Usually they're just coming demanding it. The fourth one was integrations. So I remember our first partnership was with a company called Thinkific, which was like a course learning platform. And we went out to them before that partnership was launched and said, what are your most popular CRMs that your clients use?
Right.
Because we didn't have many users. We had like 100 users maybe.
Right. So we didn't even know which integrations to build.
Yeah, there's so many, right? We weren't really industry specific. We still aren't. So they gave us a list of top 10.
Yeah.
And it was like, you know, the ActiveCampaign, MailChimp, like.
Yeah, but we also knew we were targeting SMBs. So it was like, you know, we weren't going after Salesforce or like, you know, any of those.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth mentioning that those like big company integrations are not free because it requires you to get into their app store.
They're excruciating.
Yeah, so we have like stopped halfway with Salesforce.
Yeah.
It's just too hard.
Yeah,
it's just too hard. And the reason we did those integrations was not just so that our customers would be more tied into multiple products and being like us being in the workflow, but because it's another backlink.
Yeah.
And like when we get into, I guess, someone else's integration, it's either on their integration page or their directory or their app store.
App store, right. And that's where still people find us a lot in the HubSpot app store. Yeah. They find us a lot they still find us in the Thinkific app store.
Yeah.
Right. And some companies like Thinkific, because they were fairly small, a lot farther along than we were at the time, but they're willing to do things for you, like feature you. And so we were the automated webinar platform in their store, and that's a well-known tool for that audience. So
yeah, and companies are, you know, around our size, right? Like small, medium-sized companies are willing to do some like cross-marketing.
Yeah.
So they announce us, but we also announce them, and they're also on our website.
Yeah, right.
So, and that is like evergreen marketing.
Yeah, and that turned into content collaborations, right? We did. We wrote guest posts that were genuinely valuable, that genuinely brought in solid leads, at least for us.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and also like they're in our help articles.
Yeah.
Right. Like multiple integrations are in our help articles. And, you know, it just gives us something to talk about also, like in the early days. You want to be associated with bigger companies.
Yeah, right.
Right. And that's part of like faking it till you make it.
Yeah, right.
Is like if I'm aligned with Thinkific and ActiveCampaign, then I look like
you've been around.
I look like I've been around for a bit. And also like people see us, they come to our website, it's well branded, well designed, they come into our product, it looks legit.
Yeah.
So there's no clues that we were a brand new startup. Even though if somebody really wanted to dig, of course, we're a brand new startup. We're not trying to hide that.
Yeah.
We're just trying to match our branding when somebody comes in.
Aren't we trying to hide it in a way? I mean, it's like, because I go into some young products and I'm like, oh, this is a young product. From the second I go into the product, and it's not necessarily a bad product, but I feel like we did a pretty good job of creating at least I mean, we talked about this in another episode, like the minimum marketable product. Like it had the base core functionality to compete in its category, even though it was still missing some important things.
I mean, we were not trying to hide the fact that we were a new company. No, we were trying to look more mature, look more farther along, and look to make our product look more built out. Yes. By using these integrations or by integrating with these companies and then having an integrations page, right? But it's also important to mention that these are not always great marketing strategies, right? You have to really choose. By the way, before we integrated with someone, we would reach out to their team and say, hey, we're about to integrate with you. Is there anything we can do to cross-market?
Yeah.
Right? And if you look at a company like Zapier, I have to integrate with them.
Yes.
They don't give a shit about you.
Of course not.
Zero. I actually don't even know why they have a partner manager.
Right.
Because they don't do anything for you. And maybe they'll do something for you if you're Zoom. But there is a process. Everything's published. You go through this whole like testing phase. You have this many users, and then you can apply to be this level. And then if you're this level, they give you a feature in their newsletter, but it's like deeply hidden. They will not write about you. And if they write about you, it's a no follow link.
Right.
Like that's just how they operate.
Yeah, but they don't have to, right?
Yeah,
they own the marketplace of this middleman connector for integration. So, so if
Salesforce, same thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. My God. Yeah. So we had to integrate with Zapier because is it Zapier or Zapier?
I think it's Zapier because it's a Zap. I had to learn this. Yeah, it's a Zap. But it just means how much time you should put in.
Yeah.
To also feature someone else.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we did target mostly kind of early-ish companies, or not.
I mean, mid-sized, like good-sized companies still care about this.
Right?
Yeah, because they work.
That's right.
Jobs, right. Like I mean, ActiveCampaign is huge.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And but they care.
Yeah. Right.
Right. So it just depends, right?
Yeah.
Like what the stage is. But like the important thing to mention here is it's not just the integration, right?
No.
It's all the marketing, all the partnerships, it's the branding that comes with the integration. But like, don't think that just because a company is big, that's going to give you exposure. Yeah, it's really the opposite.
It's the opposite.
The fifth one was case studies, right? So it doesn't matter how much we say we're good.
Yes.
If someone else says we're good, then we're 10 times better than what we say.
Right.
So in the early days, I mean, we always had a customers page. We always had some logos.
Yeah.
And we added to that customer page and made it a case study page really over time, like fairly quickly. Because we did find some raving fans pretty quickly, but I was forcing people, like really forcing people to get them on video.
I mean, I'm laughing because as slow as it might have seemed at the time to build out that page with different case studies, we moved really fast. And it was because you were forcing people.
I was really forcing them. And I mean, like, a lot of these were my friends.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and they weren't like unaffiliated, like fully unaffiliated customers. Like they were still finding value in our product. They were genuinely using our product, but they were my friends. Yeah. I knew from my past life.
And just to talk about the process, because it does make it very easy for the customer, right, to give a case study, is it was an interview with questions that were very easy to answer, right?
Yeah.
Like what was life before eWebinar? What was it like after? They were very, very simple questions that they could easily answer. They didn't have to write a thing down. They just had to get on the call, record the session. We would edit it, and we would take from what they said, write it into a case study for them, get them to approve it, make sure we weren't saying anything they didn't want to say, and then publish it. So we took the burden off of them to
no work.
Yeah, no work.
So it's important to mention here that my set of case study questions that I ask, I think it's like 9 questions or something like that, was structured in a way that it was like a sales pitch to our product.
Yeah, right.
So it was like, what's the problem? What's the solution?
Yeah.
Like, what did you look for before us?
Yeah.
And what benefits are you seeing from using us? And what's your favorite feature?
What's your favorite feature?
And who would you recommend us to? So I have that, by the way, as a resource on Notion that I can share on the show notes as well, and anyone can just copy this. And the process was like, when I reach out to them, I would say, hey, I would love to have you as a case study. If you can spend 15 minutes just like on a Zoom call with me, I'll record this. And if you don't want the video to be published, I will not do it. But we'll take the text. We have an editor. They will write it out. You get to approve it. But I think 10 out of 10 times they let me use the video.
Yeah.
So what we do on the case studies on our site is it's written like an article, like an interview. So question, answer. And we will chop up the video into snippets that go on top of the question for people who don't want to read. And we also, because we did a bunch of customer interviews that are unrelated to this, Before we started a customer page, I actually just reached out to all the customers that we interviewed to figure out who our ICP was and said, can I turn this and some of the video into a case study?
Yeah, and this is probably, it's obvious. It's what you said, nobody's going to believe what you say, right?
Yeah.
But this loops back to what we were talking about at the beginning, is this is how people buy now, right? I'm not going to believe you. I don't trust you. And that's also why I think people don't want to talk to a salesperson, because they're like, you're selling to me. I know you're selling to me. Yeah. So this kind of like, is sort of social selling, right? It's like, I have the same problem as this person, and eWebinar solved it for them.
By the way, the 15 minutes thing was kind of a trap.
Of course.
I knew it was going to take longer. Everyone's going to give you 15 minutes. I have never had an interview like that that's less than half an hour.
Yeah.
Because it also allowed me to dig into, hey, why do you like this feature? Oh, tell me more about that benefit. Oh, when you were looking for another solution, how did you search for it? How did you find us? How does your team feel about us? Oh, tell me more about that. I mean, it's such a sales strategy, but it also allowed me to understand where the customer was at the time and how we can find more of them, because we were super early, right? This was still within the first year and a half. So all that information was super valuable to the growth of our company and how we chose priorities.
I mean, I'm thinking about my own experience interviewing customers, and it's like, if you go in with a very clear objective, with a clear set of questions that are easy to answer, people actually enjoy doing it.
I also give them the questions ahead of time, by the way.
Oh, you do? Oh, good.
Yeah. So in the request email, I just tell them it's a super simple interview. Here are the questions. So they know,
that's great.
My whole thing is you got to set people's expectation. If you're asking for their time, this is what I'm asking from you. So there's no guessing.
Yeah. That's great.
And so I took actually that one step even further. So after that, I would take their answer, and this actually leads me to the next strategy. I would take their answers and I would write a Capterra review because I knew because we were trying to collect reviews on Capterra, which, by the way, shows up very high on Google, right? Capterra and G2 is always the first few if you look at software.
Yeah.
But we didn't do both platforms. We wanted to focus on one. So we chose Capterra, and I knew what the questions were. So I took their answers and I was like, hey, by the way, if you could take 2 more minutes, if you could write us a Capterra review, here are your, here's your copy and paste answers that you can put in. And most of the time, not all the time, they'll just do it.
But again, it's a no work thing, right? And I'm sure you gave them the link to where they could, exactly to where they could post a review, right? So you make it as simple and dummy proof as possible.
Yeah, and I actually had one review that was flagged as it just didn't get published. And my friend had to kind of go through this whole process, and then Capterra thought it was fake. And but I was like, oh, did they know that I wrote it? But it was still his words.
Yeah,
he just didn't type them out. So he had to go through this whole process to get that released, which was kind of annoying.
Yeah.
Because it is really, really hard to get people to write a review.
Yeah, and that's another layer of trust, right? Not only are you seeing a testimonial, you're seeing a testimonial on a trusted testimonial site. So that's the extra layer that doing something like going for Capterra gives you, is it also kind of contributes to your legitimacy.
Yeah, and Capterra does have, all these sites do, right? Have ad things that you can buy, packages that you can buy or whatnot.
Yeah.
But we couldn't afford it. But also, you can't buy ads when you have 10 reviews. It just doesn't look good.
Yeah.
So then you look new. And so this was kind of part of not trying to hide that we're new, but really definitely was trying to make us look more mature.
Yeah.
I still don't, we've been around for almost 4 years now as a product. And I still don't think we've hit 70 reviews. It's so hard to get someone to write a review.
Yeah. The thing is, though, software in our category that's been around for 20 years, a lot of them have significantly less than we do. So our effort has, it does make a difference.
Yeah, and the reason why these sites are important is because people do look at those when they're doing research and comparing you, and they trust what other people say. But I will say there is an exception where people will run to write a review is when they hate you.
Oh my God, yes.
like you immediately hear from them. And it's like 0 stars, 1 star, but actually those look fake.
Yeah.
And you have a chance to respond to them as well.
Yeah, they just look like disgruntled people. Like everybody knows that.
But it still sucks when you go.
Yeah, it still sucks.
Yeah. Because you actually can't dispute it. I've tried to dispute some of those things because they're just like disgruntled people that like, you know, something happened in their trial or they were being rude. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe you should just downgrade.
Yeah.
And like never use the product, but they'll make up this thing like, oh, I was in the middle of a webinar and they cut me off. Like, okay, well,
I remember, a couple of them mentioned features we don't have.
Yeah. But you can't actually dispute those even if it's fake because that's part of the review experience.
Right.
But you can respond, I think, once. But yeah, definitely building reviews also helps you, I think, show up, right, when someone Googles you, which is important.
Well, before we go on to the next one, I just want to make a point here. We call these our $0 marketing strategies. It doesn't mean they don't take a lot of time and effort.
True. That's true. That's true.
I just want to point out that it's like these don't happen magically. You are spending your time and effort, but you're not laying out any cash.
Yeah, I mean, like, is it really $0 because you know we're paying people a salary, right? But yes, of course, it's time. Like it just means we're not paying for ads.
Yeah.
So the 7th one, which we're actually going to dedicate a whole episode to, the next episode is like sharing on LinkedIn. So the story is that I was kind of desperate. Like I was in a like fairly desperate place, right? Like we were definitely burning more cash than we were making. I think it took like 30 months at least for us to like even be close to breaking even, right? And this is like when a lot of people, including yourself, make concessions to like work for this company.
Yeah.
And I reached out to my friend Lloyd Lobo and I was like, what do I do? Like, how do companies like me get eyeballs? Like, how do they get people?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, you should, you know, look up this guy named Justin Welsh. Like he like shares on LinkedIn and Twitter and, you know, he's like building an audience. I'm like, why would I want to log in on LinkedIn? It's like a resume platform.
Right.
And so I logged in and I realized like, it's just turned into a whole different thing. Like it turned into this like micro blogging platform.
Yep.
And then I took the course by Justin Welsh, which was like LinkedIn operating system. And it was just teaching you how to build an audience on LinkedIn by writing daily about something that either you care about or you have expertise in to attract an audience that may buy from you in the future. And so I was like, yeah, it can't hurt.
Yeah.
And that's when I started writing once a day on LinkedIn. I did that like once a day for like 3 months. And then I like went down to like 4 to 5 times a week because there are just certain days where you're wasting content.
Yeah.
Where like Fridays and Saturdays, like if you're posting content, yes, you're out there, but you're kind of wasting it because the engagement is so low.
Yeah.
And then as we know, like everything on social media lives for like a day maximum.
Right.
I mean, I think on LinkedIn is already long. It doesn't get shown to a lot of people, especially like as your audience grows. But sharing on LinkedIn turned out to be 20% of our demos.
Yeah.
And so we weren't getting a lot of demos, right? We were getting like 50 to 100 a month, you know, automated. I wasn't doing them, automated through our site and our software. But 20% is like not insignificant.
No, it's very significant. Yeah.
Yeah. But of course, writing content is a beast.
I mean, that's why I had to say, like, you know, these things are all challenging. Yeah. You kind of have to be relentless. You got to figure it out. Something I think you're very good at is when you don't know how to do something, you find somebody who does so you can fast track getting there, right? Because don't reinvent the wheel if you don't have to. Like somebody's done this before you. They've already cracked this nut. So, you know, find them, learn from them.
And I don't believe in shortcuts, but I do believe in fast tracking.
Oh, yeah. That's what I mean. And you kind of have to be relentless. I mean, you were relentless at posting on LinkedIn.
And the part of the course teaches you that, okay, well, you're not just going to write content for nothing, right? You have to attract an audience that you think you can make money from.
Right.
Otherwise, you're wasting your time.
Right.
And I focus on bootstrapping and not writing about webinars because, well, frankly, I'm not an expert at webinars. I just build the software.
Yeah.
I just believe the software can give people back their time.
Yeah.
But I've always bootstrapped my companies. I've done it for over 10 years. It's like building companies with very little resources and being really scrappy is what I'm really good at.
Yeah.
And the people that will benefit the most from our software are scrappy companies
with limited resources.
And it might be a bootstrap company, it might not, but it might be a resource-strapped department.
Yeah, like customer success always is.
Yeah, and so it just made a lot of sense. And and I have people reaching out to me all the time, and they're like, well, how does this help your business? But that's the best.
Yeah,
because I'm kind of being indirect.
Yeah.
Because to tell you the truth, every time I write about my podcast or eWebinar, which is a direct selling message, I get the lowest engagement. Right. People don't want to be sold to, and that is the truth. But my profile is written in a way that helps you understand what I do. And if that resonates, then they immediately start to scroll, they go to my site. So on my profile, you can join a demo by pressing a button, and that just goes to my website, which goes to a demo. Or if I want you to sign up to my newsletter, I have like sign up to my newsletter, like in the experience, right? So that's also a hack.
Yeah.
But also, like, I think the cool thing about sharing on platforms like LinkedIn, like I'm not saying like LinkedIn is the platform. It may be for me, but not for you. Like for some people, it might be Instagram, it might be TikTok, you know, whatever that is. But you don't realize that by sharing on LinkedIn and writing every day, how much more creative that makes you in other aspects of your life.
Yeah.
It forced me to think about my business in different ways.
Right. Because you're not writing fluff content, right? You need to write something of real value, even if it's entertainment value, right? Yeah. Like telling a story that whatever, but it has to have real value. So you can't fake that part.
Yeah. And also it's from people engaging with my content. Then I come up with new ideas.
Yeah. Right.
It's from people DMing me or other way around. Yeah. Because now I'm seeing other people's content. So I'm actually learning for free as I'm engaging on there. So I don't just post something and leave. Yeah. Right. I respond to every single comment, even if not immediately. I make sure everybody gets a response. And sometimes those comments are quite polarizing. Yeah. Right. So it turns into a discussion. Right. But then I see someone else and their expertise, and I've hired people from there as well. Yeah. And also, I have a founder community that I've put together and that I run, that I moderate. Yeah. And so I've been able to invite people to join that from meeting people that I feel like are my friends, but I will never meet in real life. I think that's just a weird phenomenon that we have in
the modern world.
Yeah, the modern world. So the 8th one is getting on podcasts, so podcast marketing. And this was before ProfitLed. I didn't always have my own podcast. Yeah. I forgot like when that came in, but definitely like I remember there was somebody in our demo that was like, hey, I know you're a new company. I don't know why we're talking about like demand generation, but he's like, I'm trying this new thing where I hired an agency to get me onto other people's podcasts. And it's worked really well for me. But he was selling like a $2,000-$3,000 product. I think he was like he was selling like a program. And he's like, maybe you should look into this channel. And so I actually hired the same agency. And what these podcast agencies do is they get you as a guest on other people's podcasts. Right. So I never thought about this before, but a podcast is 30 to 45 minutes of time for you to talk about yourself. Yep. And someone's just interviewing you. Yep. And so I hired this agency to put me into like something like 10 or 12 podcasts. Unfortunately, those podcasts were like the quality of those podcasts were actually quite low. Yeah. And then I realized like, why am I paying someone like $500 an episode? Yeah. Why wouldn't I just do it myself? Yep. Like
especially since the quality was so poor.
Well, yeah. Like, and the way the agency worked was you tell them what you want to get into. So let's say like business podcasts. Yeah. And you don't get to say no. If you say no, because you already gave them kind of this interview, if you say no, they still charge you.
No way.
Yeah, it's crazy. Oh, wow. I learned that like after. It was like in the fine print.
Oh, wow.
And when I say the quality was low, I mean like there were multiple podcasts where I had to lead the conversation because it was just like an awkward silence.
And also, I don't know if this is true, but I seem to remember that it was also like the audience. There's no way that audience was even in the realm of potential customers. Yeah. You know, so.
Well, the thing is like if the interviewer doesn't have enthusiasm and energy and isn't keeping the conversation going, I'm bouncing from that podcast. Yeah. So I'm not getting the value that I'm actually paying for. Yeah. So after that, I realized there's actually lots of people that use this as a strategy and market themselves. And so there's a whole process to it that I wrote an article on. It's in my LinkedIn featured section.
Okay.
So I was on, in 2023, I was on over 100 podcasts that I put myself on. So I look up the podcast that I want to be on and I pitch myself. And I think people like that. Like, and now that we have a podcast, even though we don't have guests, I get pitched all the time by these agencies. And I'm like, you are so lazy that you don't even look at the podcast to know there's no guests. Like, that's step one.
Yeah.
First, like, look at the podcast, see if they have guests. If there isn't, don't reach out. So so you don't actually have to pay for this. It's super expensive. And people like hearing from the founder or the guest themselves.
Of course they do. Like, it's the same in SEO, people pitching to write content for us. There's very few people, and they stand out like a sore thumb because it's like they are the content person at a company of similar size with a similar customer base. So of course they want to talk to you.
Yeah, and also, like, a podcast is so easy. It's just you talking.
Yeah.
Right. There are certain things that you can do to make the quality better, because if the audio is good, then the host appreciates it. If your video is good, the host appreciates it. So you want to create that brand for yourself, because hosts also introduce you to other hosts.
Right.
And if somebody recommends you and they have a good experience, then they also recommend you. Every single podcast is looking for good guests.
Yeah, right. Of course. Right.
And so, like, don't do things like show up with AirPods. A lot of people do that. Like, sometimes the host shows up like that. I'm like, don't do that. Because the quality is low.
Right.
So I actually, like, I'm a nomad and I travel with a mic and like a desktop ring light. Like, I have like a very scrappy setup. All of this is in the article that I wrote on like how people can also do this for themselves.
Yeah.
A lot of people, by the way, don't do it for themselves. Even if I give them the formula and the pitch email is in that article, they still don't do it.
Oh my God.
So it's not like, oh, everyone's doing it. Everyone's not doing it.
Yeah, right.
So you should be the one to go in and do it. And I tell my founder friends this all the time. And by the way, every single podcast has a website, a web page, which means another backlink to you. And it's such good evergreen content because people might look up things like marketing strategy.
Yeah, right.
And then you will come up,
right,
depending on your expertise.
Right.
Or like bootstrapping, and then you'll come up.
Right.
So I think it's a highly, highly underestimated channel. And it's really easy to do. And once you get some traction, once you get like hit 50, then they kind of just come to you.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah. So the 9th is content and SEO. So it's both paid and not paid, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So you run that strategy.
Yeah, I mean,
you had a salary. So
yeah,
it wasn't free.
It wasn't free, but
what else are you going to do with your time?
Right. Except learn SEO from the ground up.
You wrote all of our articles.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of that journey. I mean, I started out when I came, I had been working for eWebinar, had got another job for a period of time, right? While the business was growing, and then came back. When I came back, we were running full steam with this agency writing content that was targeted towards course creators at the time. And I just dove into writing content, didn't have a clue about how to write it. We cranked out, we were optimizing it with keywords and things like that. None of that content converted. None. Yeah. And we didn't even end up ranking very well because in hindsight, it wasn't really satisfying search intent. Like you can't really fake SEO unless you have a really soft category where nobody's competing in it. Which, by the way, can happen, especially in a category with a lot of well-funded startups. They don't even bother doing SEO. They're just going to buy ads. So in that case, sometimes you can compete in a very competitive space because no one's touching SEO. But, when we realized that like nothing was coming from this.
And we had a whole episode on that before.
Yeah, that's right.
On like really digging into why agencies just weren't working for us.
Yeah, and to make a long story short, we had to, we contacted Grow and Convert, who was really sort of like, we were baffled that no SEO agency, when you ask them, what's the return on this from a revenue perspective, they would just look at you like you were an alien.
Yeah, but that's part of the sell. It's like, well, SEO is like a billboard on a highway. Like how many people have heard that? Billboard on a highway.
Yeah, but it's nonsense because I mean, yes, attribution is very hard, right? But if you write content in a way that, without being salesy, you're genuinely saying to people who are looking to solve a problem, here's how we solve your problem, you will get conversions from it. 25% of our conversions every month come reliably from SEO. So every time, and we did a recent analysis, they're the ones that are most likely to stay. We didn't know that.
Yeah.
So, because they're the ones searching for the solution, right?
Yeah.
So, it's a lot of effort, but once you do it, you have to tend to it and refresh the content so it doesn't fall in the rankings. It's like just keeps paying dividends.
And the reason why I included SEO and content into this list is because while we did pay for it in the beginning, none of that actually returned anything.
That's right.
And it was only after we shifted your responsibilities, because you're also everything else. You're also like product manager, QA, you also wrote all the content, all the help article content. Like we had a blog, but it wasn't like SEO optimized.
Yeah,
I guess we had some articles that we wanted to write for support and some for marketing. So we had stuff on there, but people weren't finding us. And we realized there was a light bulb moment where we're like, okay, at this price point, this type of product, all our competitors are investing in SEO. Yeah. So this is actually how people are going to buy.
Yep.
So we need to own this strategy. And we did talk about that.
Well, think about that too. Buying at a certain price point, right? You're going to search for best whatever platform, right? Yeah. And then you're going to read that, you're going to check out a few, and you're going to make your decision. And the odds that you're talking to a salesperson are nearly zero.
Yeah. And so while we didn't hire you for that, I think at least I had confidence that you were going to be able to handle that, because you're a content person at heart. And so luckily you were able to learn it from Grow and Convert, own that strategy. And we didn't hire external writers till much later. Yeah. That was a lot of your time. And you didn't churn out articles like we are today with Jake helping you on the writing.
Right.
But yeah, a lot of that was just your time.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line, it wasn't until we owned the strategy and really understood it and did it ourselves did we really get results.
I think in the first 2 years, we probably had I want to say 40 articles of all different lengths. Of course, now there's a lot more. Now it's kind of a machine. Yeah. But in the beginning, it was just all you. And then as we learned about those strategies, like backlinking and all that stuff, there were things we did within the product, because we also had widgets. We also had landing pages that our company offers, right? So when someone signs up for a webinar, they go to a page to register. That's our page. Yeah. They don't have to use our page, but that's something that we offer. So there are things we did there to link it back to ourselves. Yeah. That helped a lot. That helped us showing up. Right. And SEO consistently is 50% of our demo traffic.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 50% of our traffic and 25% of our, and just this is, we were writing some content, right? We were writing all that content. We went from 0% conversions every month to 25%. So, and it just stays there as long as we sort of tend the garden.
Yeah. So we still don't spend money on marketing. I think we spend of course we hire writers and stuff but money on ads, we don't do that. In the beginning, we tried, buying a second spot on a review site. None of that actually converted, right? So we just stopped all of it. Yeah. I think we spend less than $1,000 a month still, just on retargeting, just owning the traffic that are already coming to us. Yeah. But that's it.
Yep.
So the 10th one, $0 marketing strategy, is co-marketing. So we didn't really know who we were. We still kind of don't. We were working with
We'll find out when we grow up.
Yeah, exactly. We're working with multiple different companies, different lines of business, different sizes, course creators, life coaches, you name it. We're working with them. Yeah. But you have to, right, in the beginning, when you did the revenue. And we actually figured out ways to partner with people with big audiences.
Yes.
So this wasn't influencer marketing, by the way. It was you do this for me, I do this for you.
Yeah.
So some of those things were like shared webinars. Like sometimes I was on someone else's webinar, we would send it to our mailing list. Sometimes, it was a template within our product, because we actually added like webinar templates in our product in the beginning, specifically for co-marketing.
Right.
So for example, if you were a pitch coach, right? And you had like a certain like template of a script that you sold, or a certain method that you sold, we would allow you to create a template for us.
Yeah.
So this would be like the Todd Parmley template.
Yeah.
Within the template, there would be a video teaching you how to write that script. And then there would be pre-written content like email reminders, follow-ups, confirmations, and also pre-written interactions, which are like polls, check-ins, hotspots, questions, tips throughout the webinar that were all pre-written by this coach.
Yeah, right.
And so we still have a lot of those templates.
Yeah, and one of the first ones was a Thinkific template, which came out of that, that initial integration strategy.
Yeah, so it was part of like the growth of our product, also like teaching people how to use it so we can increase conversions. Like that was part of the onboarding.
Yeah, right.
But we did a lot of that. And then every time we had a co-marketing opportunity, we would also create a blog that went with it.
Yep.
Sometimes there would be also a help article that went with it.
Yep.
So one piece of content would have like multiple different things that came out of it. I wouldn't say that was like the biggest revenue driver, but I do think that, again, associating ourselves with people with reputation,
Yes,
with credibility,
and
with
large
big
audiences.
audiences, allowed us to build our brand,
Yeah, right.
which can't really be like quantitatively measured.
Yeah, very much so. Very hard to measure.
And also, I think so the 11th thing, which is kind of a marketing strategy, not really, but I'm grouping it in here anyway, is just be accessible, right? So in the beginning, I guess even now, like every single email that we have replies to a real email.
Yes.
We never have a no reply, even including our invoices.
Yep.
So people are kind of surprised by that.
Right.
And because I was so active on LinkedIn, people felt like they had a direct channel to me.
Yep.
And I still enjoy that, right? Some people sign up, they're like, hey, we're a new customer. Sometimes it's feedback, sometimes like, hey, I love this. But they feel like it's more human.
Yep.
And it also drives me nuts when I want to get to someone or like some inbox and I just can't find an email.
Yeah.
You have to go through this whole form, everything's gated. And I get that, like maybe a company to a certain point, a certain size have to do that, but we're not really talking to those companies. Right?
No, and that's one of your like superpowers as a small startup, is that you can be accessible. You don't have to, there's no like weird chain of communication it has to go through. They can come straight to you.
Yeah, and I think people really underestimate how happy people are when they hear back very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they were not only surprised there was a reply email, but also that when they replied to the email, they got a response.
Yeah.
It's
especially
like
feedback emails.
Yeah, it's just like, what?
Yeah.
So, it's a way to stand out, getting new customers at the beginning, one at a time.
I still do this. Within a week of somebody signing up, like as soon as someone signs up, I get an email that says Todd Parmley has signed up. This is the email.
Yep.
It's just an internal email. But within the week, I always reach out, like personally. And these are not automated emails.
Yeah.
And the reason I do that is because it gives me a chance also to see who the company is.
Yeah, sure.
So if it's a company I recognize, if it's a big one that I might reach out for a deeper conversation.
Right.
See if there are ICP.
Yeah.
But I still do that. The added benefit of that is you see who is trying to scam your system. Like multiple people. So actually now, when we get a repeated sign up, I'll say, oh, this person's already signed up. It's an existing account. Because of course we have a 14-day trial. People are trying to use it in all different ways and not pay us.
10 trials.
Yeah, exactly. Recently we had somebody sign up for 10 trials, using it just to the limit, and then signing up 10 more. So it gives me an opportunity to see what's happening and where the holes are.
Yeah.
What the alerts are that we need to build. So we have to be able to limit that. Like we're not a charity. But yeah, and we actually had to change some of our terms because this was actually happening quite frequently. Like we had to say like in our terms that, one company can only sign up for one trial. So it gives us the opportunity if somebody's really misusing it. And sometimes people like don't use it and then they sign up with another email. Totally get that.
Yeah, that's different.
But it's really different than when someone is, because actually it costs us money to run the webinar because we're paying for bandwidth from Video, who's our video provider. So there's an actual cost.
Yeah. Right.
But being accessible also means like some of that reaching out, right? Letting people know that you're human, you're not just a product, you're not software.
Yeah.
And sometimes people will reply and be like, I know this is automated. I'm like, no, actually it's not automated. Like it's a templated email, of course, but I am actually hitting that, putting in the template and hitting send.
Makes a difference. People respond differently when they know they can reach you.
Yeah.
And that's when they start to realize, oh, customer support's going to be really good for this.
Yeah.
Right? Where we've talked about this before, where the assumption is the larger the company, better support. It's typically the opposite.
And also sometimes if people say, oh, I switch from something else. So this allows me to ask them, what was the problem?
Yeah, why?
And how did you find us? Like I will reply as many times as it takes for them to stop. But not a lot of people respond, but the ones that do, like it is valuable information. So I will get as much information as I can out of this person while
There's
they're
like a theme with you.
How far can I push this? Yeah. So the last one, which I think more people should take advantage of, is to either have your own, like build your own, or be a part of another peer community, another peer group. And I don't mean like be a part of a Slack group that has like 2,000 people that have like, really no engagement, where you don't really have a face and a name. So I have a group of founders, like 50 plus founders on WhatsApp. I know a lot of Americans maybe don't use that because they don't really travel like as much as like Europe, where like traveling to another country is like taking a bus. So I spend a lot of time in Europe, but also traveling, nomading as well. So WhatsApp is for my friends, at least, it's the primary texting channel. But I think even if a lot of people don't use it, they still have it on their phone. And I have a group of founders that are kind of in the same stage, or plus or minus a couple of years, that I can just reach out to. They can reach out to each other, and it's kind of like a support group.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like super active because people are busy, and you don't want it to be that active because then it gets archived. Like you want it, want like important things to be out there. But when you need, like that's a really good source of information. And because everybody knows like kind of who each other are, because when somebody joins, they give an introduction.
Yeah.
When their friends are trying to solve the problem you're solving, then they refer you.
Yeah, and this is not marketing related, but I think it's important benefit of having a peer community is that working as a small, very small team or as a solo entrepreneur, startups can be a very lonely business, and this is a great way to counteract that, right? So you have a sounding board for things, like you're not sort of out there on your own.
Yeah, and also like a lot of these peers have audiences of their own, have newsletters of their own, right? So who do you think they're going to feature if they need someone?
Right.
Right, the person at their fingertips. And I myself build a lot of communities, even just socially. Yeah. But I totally understand that not everybody has the time or even want to do that.
Yeah, sure.
But find a group that kind of fits, where you are in your vibe. And there are like things like mastermind groups or whatnot that you might have to pay for.
Yeah.
But I know things exist out there that you don't. You don't really want to. But there is something to be said, I think, to pay for like a mastermind group or something like that, because you do want to be around people that are like around your phase. Otherwise, the advice
and invested in the process.
Yeah, invested in the process.
So that's 12, right?
That's 12.
Wow, 12 $0 marketing strategies, but not zero effort.
Yeah, not zero effort.
I just wanted to. I mean, it's
$1 million effort. $0 marketing.
Right. Yeah. So, I'm not going to recap the list, but we talked about a lot of different strategies. Do you have like a hot take for today based on everything we've covered?
Yeah, I think my hot take, I guess I didn't really dive into this earlier, but I would go as far to say none of the things we paid money for actually gave us a return. I'm not saying like it didn't give us a single sign up, but it didn't give us meaningful return. So we stopped all of it.
Yeah.
And my hot take is when people hear marketing, they think it's expensive, but marketing doesn't have to cost money. Especially in the early days, you can be super creative because other people are also looking to do the same thing for their company.
Yeah.
So you just have to find like that sweet spot with someone else, especially if you're doing co-marketing, and see what other people are also doing, and try it for yourself. So it doesn't have to cost money, even though traditionally it's supposed to be expensive. What's your hot take?
Well, I think that mine is to figure it out. Like solve the marketing problem for your product. Like if we went back through this episode, I think one of the themes that came up was, we hired somebody, it didn't work. So we had enough knowledge to figure out, to know where we should go to learn to solve the problem. Or like, someone casually mentions to you in a demo that you should try podcasts, right? And then it becomes this very organized, focused strategy for a period of time to see if that will work. So it's like, and nobody's going to figure that out for you, right? Yeah. You can go to other people who've already done it to like fast track you. But, I think what it dovetails on what you were saying about no one we paid, we really got a return on investment, is you have to understand what marketing is and how it works before you can really ever hire somebody to do it for you.
I also think that when people think about, I need to market my product, they're thinking too big, right? They're thinking, I want 1,000 customers, 10,000 customers, right? Because these are the numbers get thrown around, right? When we read about startups or when we talk to our friends that are like ahead of us, right? But you need to find your first 10 customers unaffiliated, and then you need to get you to your first 100 customers. And even at 100, you could still be like maybe a bit sales-led.
Yeah.
But think about it in small chunks, right? How do I get my next 100, my next 100, my next 100? So it doesn't have to be 1,000.
Right.
We haven't even reached 1,000.
Yeah.
The recording of this podcast.
Yeah, that's right.
And we're way past 1 million at this point.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, like just be open-minded, but like think small. If you've been enjoying this podcast, I've got a small favor to ask. The only way ProfitLed grows is by word of mouth. So if you'll do us a favor and hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you're listening or watching this podcast right now, it'd mean the world to us and help us continue to spend time making these episodes for you. Ping me on LinkedIn if there are particular topics you want us to get into this season. Send me any feedback you have on this podcast because I love hearing from you. My name is Melissa Kwan, last name spelled Kwan. To get notified of new episodes, join our mailing list by going to ProfitLed.fm. I promise to only share things you'll actually care about. Thanks for listening. Bye now.